Alright, let's take a look at one of Disney's franchises that spans four decades. From 1968 with The Love Bug to the 1970s with Herbie Rides Again and Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, to the 1980s with Herbie Goes Bananas, to the 90s with the Love Bug remake, to the 2000s with Herbie Races with Lindsay Lohan. I forgot the name. Herbie Fully Loaded. There it is. What fell? Oh, Mickey. Hold on. Steamboat Willie. Whatever. Launchpad. Stand up, you stupid duck. Alright. So we start with the original The Love Bug. Came out in 1968. Stars Dean Jones, Michelle Lee, Buddy Hackett, and the great David Tomlinson. Dean Jones and David Tomlinson, of course, Disney legends. May they both rest in peace. But so I have a history with this film, and it's not what you would think. Like, growing up, I grew up with a lot of Disney films. My mom even showed me the Escape to Witch Mountain films, first two. I grew up with the Disney Channel. And there was times late at night when they have Vault Disney, I would watch Zorro, or even there was the Monkey's Uncle and the Shaggy Dog, which coincidentally also had Dean Jones, at least in the second one. But never The Love Bug. And which is weird because I grew up with Mary Poppins and Bedknobs and Broomsticks. But not The Love Bug. I don't know why I never did, but I was in high school by the time I watched this. Maybe even close to graduation. 2003, 2005-ish. Around that time when I started going to the library and they had a bunch of old Disney movies there and this was one of them. And I watched this one and made me search out the other ones. I even rented the VHS of the 1997 film just so I could watch all of them. And then, of course, by the time all that went, 2005, around that time, came in the Lindsay Lohan one, and we'll get to that one. But this is the original one. I like to share my experiences, right? Dean Jones is no stranger to Disney, with also being into Ugly Dachshund and That Darn Cat, and probably many others that I can't remember off the top of my head. And David Tomlinson, of course, was in Mary Poppins and Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which is what I know him from the most. And while he was sort of a scallywag kind of character in those films, where he wasn't a straight-up villain in Mary Poppins, he was more of a minor antagonist for Mary Poppins, where he wasn't really a bad guy, so to speak. And in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, he gave off this scallywag, scammer sort of vibe. But here, he's a straight-up villain. He plays Mr. Thorndike, who owns the car dealership in which Herbie is sitting in when Mr. Douglas comes upon it. The car has a mind of its own, of course. And when he berates the car and hits it, Jim Douglas, defends the car. Hey, don't do that. And so it latches on to Jim Douglas. Jim Douglas, of course, being played by Dean Jones, and is a former race car driver, now turned into a demolition driver. But upon finding Herbie, he gets the idea to race again, and it works. He is joined by Tennessee Steinmetz, played by Buddy Hackett, and eventually catches the eye of Thorndike's employee, Carol, played by Michelle Lee. Because it's Disney, you need a romance. At least classic Disney. Now, the woman would overshadow the man because that's their agenda. But anyway, so he goes into racing, and he starts to win races with his car. And that leaves Thorndike to want the car back. Because he sold it to him for cheap. I think, or he forced him to buy it, I think. Because I can't remember. He thinks that he stole them because the car drives off. So he thinks that he stole the car and that forces him to buy it. I'm not exactly sure why you would say that. I don't know. But he then wants it back. And, Steinmetz, Tennessee Steinmetz, Buddy Hackett, he's the only one who believes that the car is alive until it gets to a certain point in the film where they all realize, even Thorndike to a certain point, that it's alive. Watching this back again, this is a fun movie. It's childhood wonder, even though I didn't watch it when I was a child. It's a fun movie. It's fantastic. Some of the special effects, it's half and half with the special effects, actually. The practical stuff with Herbie and everything is very good. But when you get into some of the green screen shots, like when they're driving or when Jim is looking for Herbie through the city, it's sketchy. And especially a scene in which there's a bear in Thorndike's car, you can tell the bear isn't actually there. But that's, time. This is the 1960s, where now it's a little bit better. It's better. Back then, they didn't have all the technology like we do now. So it's easy to give that just a little bit of a pass because, it's not going to be the best. Speech that Jim gives. So, at one point, the car crashes into this Chinese guy's Chinese restaurant, I think, and he ends up buying the car. He ends up finding an impound, and they're going to impound it unless Jim Douglas can pay for it, which he can't. But he makes a deal with the guy. Tennessee talks to him in Chinese, which is a funny scene because he says all this stuff in Chinese, and then the guy wants to buy the car. So he tells that to Jim, and Jim's like, we tell him if he lets me drive it in the Eldorado tomorrow, and if we win, I'll give him all the prize money, and he has to sell Herbie back to me for $1. And then the guy speaks English and says, now you are speaking my language. That's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. I will admit I've never really cared for, the race is fine, but Herbie splitting in half, as funny as it's supposed to be, never really got me. Because, Tennessee makes a comment at the beginning of the first day, because it's like a 2-day race, that he had to mess with the frame so that he can get everything to fit. And that sets you up for, okay, something's going to happen. But nothing happens the first day other than it shuts down. And then you get this stupid added scene that I never liked, it doesn't make any sense because the guy can't actually do this. So what happens is, at the start of the race, Thorndike comes to talk to the Chinese man. I don't remember his name. And they make a deal. It turns out the deal was that if Jim Douglas didn't win the race, Thorndike gets Herbie. Well, upon the first day, Herbie had a rough time, and it seems like he's not going to make it for the rest of the race. So Thorndike shows up to steal him back, but when Thorndike punches Douglas, Herbie springs back to life. And they decide they're gonna keep racing, so Thorndike doesn't get the car. But the thing is, the Chinese guy already made a deal with Douglas. He cannot then make another deal with Thorndike for the car because he made a promise that if Douglas won, he'd sell Herbie back to him for $1. You cannot then make another deal for the car with someone else. I know there's shady dealings, but this man is an honest man. This guy is an honest man. And to me, it doesn't make any sense that he would make a deal. He wants money. Sure, he wants to protect his investment. He wants to make sure his restaurant gets fixed. You know what I mean? I understand that, but he already made the deal with Douglas, so he shouldn't then make another deal with Thorndike. It completely derails it for me, but this film is still pretty good. I wager one of Disney's best live-action films, and it's a classic film, of course. The speech that Jim Douglas says after they think they've lost that night, before Thorndike shows up, talking about the car, talking about the kind of relationship that a man and his car would have. It's fantastic. And you also have the scene where Thorndike sabotages Herbie with Irish coffee, but okay, that's a little funny stuff. I also like in Jim's first race with Herbie, when he's racing, you got Tennessee holding up cards telling him, not yet, and then last lap, he's way behind. Now Kirby, boom, zooms in. Even though Thorndike's trying to stop him, he still wins. And in the end, of course, in the end of the film, he wins. He gets the girl. He marries Carol, even though they only know each other for like a few days. But still, it's a fantastic film. I give it a 9 out of 10. I went into this thinking I was going to give it a 10, but there's still little problems I have, but it gets a 9 out of 10 for me. So what are your thoughts on The Law of Bug? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We're going to get into the sequels. Trust me. Thank you for watching. I've been Scotty. We'll see you in the next one.